one foot inside my presentation, and if he continues, he's going to put his other foot and he's going to be right in my presentation. So it's okay, but only just. So I'm going to continue along a very similar theme to what Havoya was talking about, again with some different ideas. This is fantastic. It causes me a problem because I have to lie to my wife about how terrible the weekend in Portugal was now. Try and justify to her that actually I'm working. It's a common problem. I have to explain to her all the time. So we're going to have two players who are going to play, and we're going to try this with the green ball. And actually, just as an example of some of the similarities between what Havoya was talking about and what I'm going to talk about, I'm actually going to use the first page of his flip chart as well, because this is obviously very relevant. I'll leave it here, you can see it. This is going to be very relevant to what I'm going to talk about. Has he left me any paper? Ah, okay. I'm also going to put an acronym on the board, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. SMART. Okay? I don't know how it works in Portuguese. You may have to think of a different acronym or change the words a little bit. But we're talking about specific, measurable, agreed, realistic, and timed. Okay? If you're already familiar with it, I apologize. If you are not familiar with it, then already that's something. This is about goal setting. SMART is an acronym which is used a lot when we talk about setting goals for players. And so I'm going to refer to this a little bit as we go through the presentation for the next hour or so. I have two players. Can we just clear the lines from the court, please? And actually, I think I'm going to ask the two players to start from this end with me, because I don't know, it's about 50-50. No, we can leave them where they are. It's okay. I want you just to look at the players serving. Can I have the two boys to this side, please? Okay. So whilst they're warming up their serves a little bit for this first exercise, I want to just talk about specific, measurable, agreed, realistic, and timed. Now, it's quite possible to make a drill specific, okay? And if we use some of the examples which Havoya talked about, they had a specific aim, okay? And so we can make our goals quite specific within a drill. We can discuss it with the players, we can agree it with them. Sometimes there is no agreement. I'm the coach, I'm going to tell you we're going to do it, and you have to agree to it because I'm the coach and you're the player. But it's also good to get the players to agree. That doesn't just mean that they say, yes, I agree. It also means that they understand why they're doing the drill. And again, Havoya talked about that just now. To make the drill realistic is, you would hope, is pretty obvious. That's the court size, it's the ball we're using, it's the requirement of the drill in relation to their ability to play the game and their ability to think. And then we may have some sort of time frame. It could be that the lesson is the time frame. It could be that it's a longer term goal over a week or a month or 2 months or 3 months or a year or whatever. But the bit which is quite often missing in tennis is this bit, the measurable part. Because if you look at the Olympics and you go inside the Olympic Stadium and you see the guys running 100 meters, You can measure, it's an objective measure. Either they run less than 10 seconds or they don't. It's very clear. When the guys are throwing the discus, either they throw 60 meters or they don't. The javelin, do they throw 70 meters or they don't? High jump, do they jump this bar or they don't? You can measure it, it's very objective. But tennis is harder in many ways to be objective. You can measure the ball speed on the serve. You can, of course, look at the results and say, well, he won and he lost, so that's our measure. But we also need to try to find some ways in which we can measure what the players are doing during the drill. Normally when we look at players, and if you look at these two boys here, I could ask you, what do you think about their serve? And some of you will say, well, I like it. Others will say, I don't like it. But it's a subjective thing. We agree or we disagree. I like the grip, I like the elbow. No, I don't agree. And it's a subjective thing. But what we can measure within our drills is the effectiveness of what they're doing. And I want to show you today some ways in which we can measure a little bit the effectiveness of what the players are doing in their drills. And by doing that, I can get the players to think. Targets to get players thinking. This is not just about teaching them to have better technique. You know that technique on its own doesn't really mean very much. We want effective technique so that they can be the boss of this. When you look at a lot of your players in the club, who's the boss? Is the ball the boss of the player, or is the player the boss of the ball? And a lot of the time, especially under pressure, you see that the ball is dictating to the player. We want to try to change that so that more often the player is dictating to the ball. So we're going to get the players to think about 5 ball characteristics. Vilamoura talked a little bit about it without listing them. We're going to think about the height, the direction, the depth, the speed, and the spin of the ball. And we're going to use those criteria to help us to have players who can think about how they can be the boss of this, to be more effective with what they do. Okay, so that's the aim of the presentation. So boys, can we just stop there please? We have 4 boys and 4 girls as well. So, this is, wait, stop. So, can you explain? And I have a question, it's a serious question. So Pedro's going to hit 5 and then Guillermo's going to hit 5 afterwards. I want you to tell me, when you saw the 10 serves, I want you to tell me how many of those 10 serves were good. Okay? I want you to tell me how many of those 10 serves were good serves. So Pedro, can you start? 5 serves for the right ball. Okay? How many of the 10 serves you're going to see now are good serves? Let's go. Okay. Okay, so you've seen 5 serves. Don't say the number yet, but we're now halfway, and I hope you already have a number, maybe on paper or in your head, how many of those 5 serves were good. We're going to see now the next 5, and then we will see how many of the 10 serves you think were good serves. Okay? Okay, so does somebody want to tell everybody how many serves do you think were good from the 10 you saw there? Can you just give me a number? 3? 3? 7? Who said 7? 7? 7? 6? 1? Okay, so we all have different numbers. Now I will respectfully say to you, you have no idea. You have no idea how many serves were good, because we haven't discussed what is the measure for deciding whether those serves are good. So what normally happens with players is that they assume that if the ball goes in the service box, it's good, and if the ball goes out or it goes in the net, it's bad. So maybe some of you, when you're giving me your number, you're working on that same criteria. But we have two nice players here, and to get the ball in the court is not enough. It's not enough. Of course, it's important, and as Ravoya was saying, it's obviously critical to get as many balls in the court as possible. But you get to a level where, even with these players, that's not enough. So we then have to start to think, well, what more can we do with the serve, except just to get it in the box? What else can we do? We need to look at how we are going to measure the effectiveness. Okay? So there are different ways we can do that, and I want to have a look and see. So, typically what happens, we have some cones. Okay, can we have the first server again? Pedro, you can come again to hit 5 more. Thank you. Okay, so this is normally what happens. So Pedro's going to hit 5 serves. So we say, well, we don't know how effective the serves were, so we need a target. So, Pedro, which would you like to serve? Would you like to serve wide, or would you like to serve to the middle? Would you like to serve to the wide or to the middle? The middle, okay. So, I'm going to put the cone there, okay? So, can you hit 5 serves? And again, tell me how many of the 10 serves you're going to see are good serves. Okay, let's go. Okay. Okay. Okay, so we've seen 5 serves. So, Guillermo, would you like to come? Ask him, does he want to hit the ball to the middle or wide? Wide? Okay. Okay, so we're going to put the target here, okay? Okay. Okay, so same question, you saw 10 serves. How many of the 10 serves were good? 6? 1? 5? Okay, so what I'm doing here is what we all do. We put some cones to indicate where we want the ball to bounce. And there are 2 things that are happening. One is that I'm telling the players where the ball should go. I asked them, would they like to serve wide or would they like to serve down the middle, and they told me. But then I am telling them, because I'm the coach, so it's my job to put down the cones, I'm telling them, okay, so I want you to hit the ball to here. And the implication is, if the ball lands very close or it hits the cone, it's good. And if it's not so close, it's bad. But the problem here is that what we're doing is we're looking at the first flight path. We are looking at the trajectory before the bounce. So we still don't know too much about how effective what the players are doing is. Especially with the first 5 serves. Actually, we could probably assume that quite a few of those serves would have been fairly effective because they were quite close to the cone. There was a little bit more variation with the others. I'm going to get you to think now about how we can put targets around the perimeter of the court, because when you hit the ball with spin and speed as a combination, the ball continues to move in the air after the bounce. It doesn't just swing and then go in a straight line. It continues to move. So the impact is not so much where the ball is bouncing, but where the ball is going out of the court. Is the ball crossing the tram line, or is the ball crossing the baseline? And we can ask that question for serves and for ground strokes. So I'd like now to have one of the players to this end. Pedro, I think we're going to need to communicate this with him because I want to make sure he really understands. Okay. We're now going to have a returner because one of the ways in which we can see if a serve is effective is what it does to the opponent. That's, in a way, a measure of effectiveness. If the ball is going straight to the returner here, that would suggest it's not so effective. If the ball is going to here, it's more effective. And of course the same the other side. So he's going to come and return. Just come to here. Now I'm going to ask him a very specific question, and I'd like him to think about the answer. I'd like him to tell us what is the serve which you would find the most difficult.
Qual é o serviço que tens mais dificuldade em responder? Aberto ou atento?
Okay. These are important questions because did you see his response? He's thinking about this. And the reason I like this as a question, I'm asking him as the returner, but I want him to think that same question when he's the server and he is serving to his opponent. And the question is, what can I do to give my opponent the most difficult return? Or to give them the return that they don't like to play? Or to give them the return which is on their weaker side? So, he's told us that he finds the serve which comes down the middle is a weaker return. Yes? It's going to be tough. It's going to be harder. So, one way we can measure the effectiveness is by looking at what impact the ball has on the opponent. So, if we can now serve to the middle, and we will see now if the serve is effective. Why? Because it's taking the returner here to places in the court that they don't want to be in. To play shots they would choose not to play. Okay? So, if you come into here, so can you just tell him to serve and hit 5 serves down the middle? And again, let's see how many of these serves do we think are effective?
Sim. Responde e tu serves 5 bolas ali ao teu.
Just the serve and the return, nothing else. Just the serve and the return.
Não, só o spot. Only serve and the spot.
Yeah, 2 shots. Yeah. Okay, he played it well. So although the ball would have landed quite near the target, we can say that that serve wasn't particularly effective. Okay, it didn't put so much pressure on him. Okay, 2 more. Now what I like about this, and I think it's important, is that can you see how he's really focusing now on doing something more? When you ask your players and they're at the baseline and they're just about to serve, and you say to your players, hey, just before you serve, what's your plan? And they look at you and they, I don't know. get the ball in the box. They have no idea, a lot of the players. So it's really important that they come with a plan. And we'll talk about how the plan is going to evolve after the serve later on in this presentation. Two more. Okay, it was a good direction, just needs to go over the net. Okay, so he played it quite well. He played the serves quite accurately. They probably would have landed right by the cone. So now we can start to understand a little bit more what he needs to do to make the serve more effective. Maybe it's more spin, maybe it's to be hitting the ball harder, and it gives us a technical goal because we can see perhaps a lack of effectiveness with a particular serve. So we have a measure of effectiveness, which is what is the ball doing to the opponent. Let me show you another way we can look at this. Let me put the serve out here. You now go to this end again. Yep, this side. Let's suppose that the returner says, I like to play the forehand, but I find it very difficult when I have to return away from the court. So I'm not putting the marker in the court, because I don't want to know exactly where the ball is bouncing. I want to know where the ball is taking the opponent. I want to know what the ball is doing in the air. So again, we're looking at the combination of ball characteristics. The direction has to be right. The speed and the spin have to be right. So the goal, boys, is to hit the ball with your serve through the goal. Of course, it must bounce in the service box.
5 inch?
Yeah. So again, if I ask you the question, how good are these serves? Now we can start to look at a more specific measure of the effectiveness of the players. Okay, he's looking for the target. It's got to go in the box. So it's none from 2. Okay, one from 4. Very good. Okay, so now we start to see that there is more to hitting the serve than just getting the serve in the box. And when we look at the effectiveness of the serve, they need help. These are not practices to do with red players. These are practices when the players have more control of the speed and the spin of the ball. Okay, which is why we're doing this on a full court with a green ball with slightly older players. But what I want them to do is several things. I want them to understand that they have a plan. When they come to the baseline, I have an intention, I have a goal, I have a plan. We'll talk about what the plan is in a moment. I want them to understand the idea that they are earning opportunities. Some of you have children. I have a 9-year-old boy. He understands that if he's good, or if he does something for me, he will earn something. If he does a job for mummy or for daddy, then maybe he will get £1 and he can go and buy some sweets. He understands, if I do this, then I will get that in return. And that's a really important principle on the tennis court, because these boys will understand, they're old enough to understand, if I do this, I hit my effective serve, I will earn something in return. What will that thing I will earn be in return? The opportunity then, maybe to finish with the next shot. If my serve is effective, the probability is the return is going to be weaker, and then I can be ready to finish with the next shot. So the players start to understand that it's not just about hitting a ball. It's hitting a ball to control the ball characteristics to make what I'm trying to do effective. Okay? So now let's take the player back to here. And Boyer talked a lot about decision making in his presentation. One of the things which we have to be careful of with kids is that we don't give them too many choices too quickly. And either or, you do this or you do that. Option one, option two. But if you give them too many choices, they end up making no decision. Okay? So I'm going to make this a very simple decision here. If he hits the serve and it takes the returner towards this goal here, then the forehand goes into the other corner. And we start to understand the idea that if I can get the ball characteristics right on my serve, I can make it effective, then I earn the opportunity to finish with the next ball. And we start to look at effectively what our patterns of play. But to be able to earn the opportunity, they first have to be able to not just get the ball in the box, they have to be able to do something more effective with that ball. So, Pedro, could you explain to him, he's going to serve out wide, he's going to return the ball, and if the ball looks as though it's going to go through the goal, then his forehand goes to here. Okay, so it's a three-shot drill. Okay, so server, can you ask him to tell us how effective was the serve?
Acho que o seu serviço conseguiu desequilibrar o adversário? Não. Então o que é que vai fazer?
Effective or not effective?
Foi eficaz o serviço ou não? Não.
No? So what's he going to try to do with the next one?
Então agora o que é que vais tentar fazer com o próximo? Trying to be more effective?
Try to be more effective by doing what?
Vai fazer o quê? O que é que vais fazer? Vai jogar mais forte? Vai jogar mais aberto? He's trying to hit wider.
Okay, so we now have a player who's starting to think about what he's trying to do with the serve. And now we have a little bit more understanding of effectiveness. Okay, let's try again. Effective, not effective?
More or less.
Okay. Into my hands. Serve the ball to my hands. Good try. And again. Okay. Again. Serve wide. Where's the return? Again. Very nice with the serve. Well done. It's the first time you had the good combination. So now we can start to see he's understanding more how to use the mix of the ball characteristics. The last three serves now are spinning wider. They're taking their opponent further out of the court. It's taken him a little while to find it, but he's now understanding how he can make his serve more effective. So let's see now if we can go to this side and then to be ready for the forehand. And I see this a lot in coaching. I go to a lot of clubs and see a lot of coaches at work in the UK and in different places. And a lot of the time, when the kids are serving, we see a lot of this. Hit the ball, go back, get another one. Hit the ball, go back, hit another one. Or maybe the variation is hit the ball, turn, look at the coach throws me another ball, so I don't even have to move from here. But what we don't see so much is the serve being connected to the rest of the game. So one of the ways you can measure the effectiveness of the serve is to see what you can do with the third shot. It's logical that if the serve is more effective, sooner or later, my second shot, the third shot in the rally, is going to be a little easier. So if our server here can think about what he's trying to do with the ball characteristics, because he sees the visualized target out in the corner there, he's taking his opponent wide, and then he can go for the corner. But he has to be ready, so when he's coming in here, he has to then look for that ball and stay alert. And a lot of our serving practice doesn't encourage that, because they hit a ball, switch off. Hit another ball, switch off. How many good serves? Well, we don't really know. We just count the ones that went in the box. So we can do some simple things to make the serve more effective and to get the players to think about what they're doing with the ball, to start to create opportunities, earning opportunities to build, earning opportunities to finish. Let's try one more time. There we go. There we go, there we go. Yeah? Okay, so now we start to have a serve which is not just about trying to get the ball in the box. It's not just thinking about, oh, I have to make it land here because the coach told me. It's now, I have a plan with my serve to find the mix of the direction, the speed and the spin to hurt my opponent. If you imagine in boxing, my goal is to try to hurt my opponent. I want to get him off balance and on the ropes so that with the next one, I can put him down. Here, I want to get him on the ropes with my serve so that with the next one, I can put him down. Same principle. But he has to earn it. It's not going to be given to him. He has to make the opportunity by being effective with his serve. Okay. Yes or no? Okay. And he knows it. Now, if we then take away these cones, because maybe in training and certainly in match play those cones are not there, he has to visualize those cones. He has to visualize taking his opponent's racket out here for the return. Okay, so try to do it now without the cones. Very nice, good, well done. Okay, one more. So now we have a player who's thinking, because we use the targets to help him to understand how we can measure effectiveness. One more. Very nice. Very nice. And then, remember what I said, when you give players choices, either or, one or two. Maybe as a difference now, we could say to him, if you want to go the same direction again with the forehand, instead of going to this corner, we can maybe make that as another option. But the fact is, he has choices now. Why? Because he understands what it means to be effective with the serve. Not just to aim for a fixed point in the service box, but to think about what he's doing to the ball in the air. And that's what does the damage to the opponent. It takes the player to places they don't want to be. And that was the first. You made it. Okay. Later on, when the players start getting used to making some more decisions and when they have the choices, now we take this away and we'll give him two choices. So if he wants to serve wide, he can serve wide. He must visualize the goal here. Or if he wants to serve to the middle, he can serve to the middle. He must visualize the serve to here. And then he must be ready to play the third shot. Okay, effective or not effective to serve? No, because? You can say in Portuguese.
O que é que achas que não foi eficaz? Conseguiste acertar em algum dos alvos que visualizaste?
You didn't visualize the target. Can you imagine the target? Can you visualize it? Can you see it? Yes? Okay. And then you have to try to make the ball go to the target. Okay? This takes time. It takes patience and discussion with the player. Okay. Did he make the target? It was good? Okay. So, the first question, how many of these serves are good? Before, we had no real idea. Now he knows, and we know, that target was there, that serve was very good. It's exactly where he wanted it to go. We just need to make sure that when he's finished his serve, he's then ready, looking for the next ball. Because if he is effective with his serve, he will earn the opportunity to attack or to finish. And this idea of consequence is something which young kids don't understand. But as they get older, they start to understand, if I do X, then Y becomes possible. If I serve wide, I move him out wide, then the forehands of the space becomes possible. If I don't serve effectively, those choices are not there. So he needs to be physically and mentally ready to respond like the boxer who has his opponent on the rope to put him down with the next punch. Let's try again. Okay. Giving me a good reason. No, I wasn't happy with it because it didn't go close enough to the middle. Maybe the target another time would have been to hit the ball to his left hip and it might have been a good serve. But his target, in his mind, was to hit the ball straight to the middle. He told me he wasn't happy because he didn't make it. So we now have a player who's starting to understand what it means to control the ball characteristics to be effective. Because he has targets which we were using, and then he's now visualizing outside the court, which is making him think. Okay? So I'm going to show you another example now from the baseline. So can we move? We just need more space because the players are going to need to move back. So, just checking time, what I'm doing. Okay, so can we play some forehands and backhands? Play some ground strokes? Play? Yeah? And again, I'll ask you the same question. How many of these forehands and backhands are good? Let's have a look. It's magnetic, isn't it? It's like there is a magnetic force which makes the opponent and the player hit the ball straight to each other. Okay, so what's our measure? We don't have a measure yet, so we don't know how many of these forehands and backhands look good. We can say, well, they look very nice. These look like quite nice players. That's not a measure of effectiveness. That's just a subjective opinion of the two players. So let's now start to look at how we can think about being effective with the ground strokes. So, let's take further lines, they're in the corner. So, let's take a typical situation. I'm the coach, so of course it's my job to put down the markers. That's my job. It's in my contract. I have to put down codes. Okay, so, to be more effective, we must hit the ball deeper. Okay, so your job now is to hit the ball between this line and the baseline, because this will make you more effective. It will make you better. Okay, let's play. So you need, yeah. Okay, it's no good. That's better. So, let's ask the question again. Let's see some forehands and backhands. Let's see how many forehands and backhands are good. Again? Okay, stop. So, again, it depends on what we mean by good. They didn't miss. They didn't miss. And they look nice forehands and they look like nice backhands. So congratulations, you must be very good players. But it's not about how it looks, it's about what the ball is doing to the opponent. The problem with a marker like this is that I can hit this target in a number of different ways. I can hit the ball into this target like a complete beginner, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's effective. I can play this forehand like this. I can play this forehand like this. Okay? And it's in the target. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's effective technique. It just means it landed in the target. So, we need to think about what we're doing to the ball and what we're doing to the opponent. At a beginner level, actually, those balls that I hit might be quite effective because they're pushing the opponent back and it's quite high and so on. But at this level, to hit the ball in a particular point of the court isn't enough. They need to think about what they're doing to the opponent. So, let me ask him the question. Which forehand or backhand, which forehand or backhand do you find difficult? Okay, on the backhand, high and deep. Okay, so I'm using this reverse question again. What do you find difficult? And then we'll say to him, okay, so your opponent finds this really tough. Let's give it to him. Let's start to think about what we're doing with the height, the direction, the depth, the speed, the spin, to get him, in the boxing example, to get him on the ropes. He's already told us he doesn't like high, deep backhands. It doesn't necessarily matter where the ball is bouncing in the court. It could land here, but if it's not hit the right way, it would be less effective. It could land here, and if it's hit in the right way, it could be much more effective than this one, because it depends on the ball characteristics. So we're going to look at the position of the player for the backhand as a measure of the effectiveness for the player down there. Let's just move this forwards a little bit. And I'm just going to get the players to think through this. Okay? So have I put on the chart here, and it's very important, let the players play. I want to see how effective they can be at not just executing the forehand and the backhand, but also how they can think in the situation. So, he needs to understand, not just with the first shot, but he has to try to find the time to move this player here to where he doesn't want to be to play this backhand. And let's see which solution he comes up with. You can't do these exercises with red kids. Okay? These are exercises for older kids here. We'll see how they get on here on the green court. These are not principles. Kids at young age don't understand consequence. They don't understand how, if I do X, then Y can happen. It's too young, it's too complex a concept. Here, we have a chance. We'll see. Time will tell. Okay, let's play. Ha ha ha! So I want to know what's he thinking down there. What's in his mind?
O que é que estás a pensar? O que estás a tentar fazer?
Try to spin the ball. Good. What else?
The left side.
Okay, to the left. Is it just spin, or do we need height as well?
Só um bocadinho diferente, precisas de levantar um bocadinho mais.
A little bit height and some spin. Okay. Try again. Okay, again. Very good try. Yes, good try. Ooh, okay. Okay, stop. So, he already is starting to look for solutions to the problem, or the opportunity rather, which is that we know that this guy here does like to play his backhands from back here. And actually he made it 2 or 3 times without getting so much spin. He had the height, he had the depth. As they get older and as they start to accelerate more, then they can start to use the spin more effectively, and maybe the target is coming a little bit shorter this way because the spin is doing more of the work. Okay? But we have a player now who's playing forehands and backhands with a bit of a plan. It's not for him to hit the ball every time to here, but to wait for the opportunity, and that brings up lots of discussions about when is the right time to be effective with this particular ball. Okay? So we could work this as what we call a closed practice. If I wanted to basket feed to him, okay, I don't want to put targets in the court here. I want him to think about getting the right mix of height, direction, depth, speed, spin on the ball, so the ball is bouncing past my chest. And then he can practice that forehand or the backhand, whichever it might be, in a situation where he's really thinking not just about hitting forehands and not just about making the ball land in the court, but he's thinking about what he's getting the ball to do. Remember I said in the introduction, is the ball the boss of the player, or is the player the boss of the ball? And of course in tennis it's going to be both, because there is an opponent who's trying to make his life difficult. But when the opportunity is there, we need to see if he can try to take it. So, let's try one more time, and I want to ask him a question, just before he plays. So, I want to ask him, it's actually really tough to see the bit down there. Can you see it or not? Okay, it's tough to see it. Okay, so if you hit the ball and he moves behind the line, what can you do to be ready for the next ball?
Se conseguires jogar uma bola, falamos há bocado, e ele passar para trás da linha, o que é que vais fazer com o próximo ataque?
To the other side with the direction, okay. What about time? What about to take away some time from him? Because if you put him under pressure there, how can you take away some of the time?
Em relação ao tempo, vais tirar um bocadinho de tempo.
To take some time, okay. I want you to try to take some time away by just coming just inside the court here, so that you're ready then to see if you can finish. Okay? And then if you want to go to this corner, okay, so we're going 1-2 again, one wide. If we get him on the ropes, then we must be ready then with the punch to put him down on the canvas in the boxing ring. So again, this is quite a concept here which young kids won't understand. I have to earn the opportunity to finish things off. If I do this and I do it well, then the opportunity comes. Okay, so let's try again. Wait. Okay, start again. Okay. Australian history now. Okay. Now, of course, when you have one player at one end who's trying to be effective, you've also got another player who's trying to counter that. You have an attacker and a defender, and of course the balance in the play is changing. So let's have you down to this end now, and you come to this end. We'll see if we can make it quick. For now, we'll leave him with the same target. Even though I didn't ask him the question, we'll leave it with the same target, because it could be effective for him too. So you come to here. Okay. And if you make it, and you push him back, where do you go? Okay, you want to go to the open door? Yeah? Okay, from which part? What do you do? Stay back?
Ficas cá atrás, quando isso acontece, ficas cá atrás ou entras no corte?
Okay, only when you make it. So he starts to understand whether his ball is effective enough for him to change his position. Okay. Okay, of course there are other tactical decisions he could be making here with a lot of these balls, so we know that. Let's just work on this one for now. Okay, and again. Okay, it's not quite working, so let's try it this way. That's okay. Okay, let me just show you as a simplified practice here. Okay, so I'm going to feed from here. If the ball comes past me, by my chest, you move in. On the next ball you can go to the corner. But only if you are effective with the first one. Okay? Are you ready? Are you sure? Okay. Okay, so that's the ball you want, okay? And then what do you do if you move, if you make it? What do you do? If it comes up here, yeah? So you ready then? Here we go. 2 balls. Okay, there it is. Okay, good. So, you understand if you make this one, you have the opportunity then to finish. Why? Because you're moving me from here back to here in a difficult position. So this is not about where the ball is bouncing on the court so much as where the ball is taking the opponent. And we have a plan here for the player to find the M in smart. We have a specific objective here to move the opponent. We can discuss whether we agreed it. It can be realistic for the player. But how are we measuring it? If I can find it. How can we make this measurable? How can we measure forehands and backhands? We can do it in a subjective way and say, oh, that looks really nice and he plays like this or he plays like that player or whatever. But the only way to make sure that we know about the effectiveness of the forehand is not just to look at the style of the player or even just to look at the technique. It's to look at what the ball is doing in the air. And what the ball is doing in the air is determined by the player. So if we know that the player is making the right things happen with the ball, it tells us already there are some good things going on with the technique. Okay? So the player now can start to think about a plan for not just hitting balls, hitting balls, hitting balls and trying not to miss, but hitting balls with a purpose so that he can try to take the offensive. He can try to use the mix of the height, the direction, the depth, the speed, the spin at the right times to move the opponent. And of course at this end, this poor guy now has to play from deep. We could look at ways of measuring the effectiveness of his defense with another high deep ball. And we could do the same thing with something on the court, or we could put a rope across, not the net, but we could put a rope across a three-quarter line here for the ball to go over. Yeah, we could. So if we had a line here, Horoya, can I get my own back on you now, please? The rope. Yeah, there at the back. There. Okay. So let's make it at this end. Let's start to go. Yeah. Okay. So if the ball is crossing this line here, he has to find a solution. Not too high, guys. Let's try it. We'll see. Okay? So just to make the ball land in the court isn't enough. It could land here, but if it's going underneath the rope, it's not so effective. If it's coming here and it's coming over the rope, that's a much more effective flight path. That's really going to do some damage to the opponent. If we find that this is too close or it's too low, we can of course move it. This could be a net. If you take your mini net and you put your mini net here, so the ball is coming down over the net. We don't have to tell our players so many of the things that we tell them. We talk too much as coaches and sometimes we give too many instructions. If we can be smart by using targets outside the court, you can rest now, it's okay. Just so they can see it. Yeah, I'll talk and then we'll give them a chance to have a go in a moment. Okay? So we can use targets outside the court or in the court, over the court like this, to get them to think in different ways. So let's go back up, let's put this up. So, does he understand? He needs to hit the ball over this, into here to push him back.
Ok, a mesma bola, só que agora tens de passar por cima da corda.
Are you ready? Okay, let's go. There we go. First time. Okay, stop. I was only really interested in the first ball. We don't need to do it every ball. But the beauty here is that he can then play the rest of the rally going over or under as he wants. But we're working on one specific ball in the point. One ball which is going to put the opponent on the ropes. So that he can then understand that he hurts his opponent, step inside the court, and then look to finish with the next one. End off. So, if you make it over the rope, I want you then to be ready to finish.
Se conseguires a primeira por cima da corda, uma das bolas por cima, para-te logo depois jogar a outra no espaço vizinho.
Okay.
Não, a outra ali. A outra vai ser por baixo.
Okay, ready? So, when it goes over the rope, you then ready, up, boom. Okay? Okay, stop. Stop. So this ball was long, but already now you can start to see, this is the beauty, it's like chess. He's trying to do something, he's now trying to find a solution. He knows that if he has to go all the way back here, he's going to have problems. So he tries to take the ball closer to the line. This is what happens. Okay, again. Forward. Go. Okay. I'm not sure we quite saw it. You were trying hard. Let's try one more time. And when you make this one, you have his opponent on the ropes, you hit him with a big punch on the chin. His opponent in the boxing ring is like this, and he didn't realize that he hurt his opponent. So the next step then is to realize I hurt his opponent, boom, punch him down on the canvas. end of match. Yeah? So this is a learning process, but the important thing here is he's visualizing now what he's trying to do with the ball. And so much of our coaching, it seems to me, is about how to hit the ball. It's about the technical part. And of course that's important. But don't forget that tennis is a game, and it's about them learning how to use these tools like spin and speed, how to use them to be effective. And there are a lot of players, I think, who go onto court and they're brain dead and they just play like machines, and their measure of effectiveness is, I will try not to lose, I will try not to miss. I'm not sure that's enough. That's not enough. Against a smart player, they'll find solutions. So we need to try to get players to think by being creative, by using targets which help them to think a little bit about what they're going to do with the ball. Okay? There are other examples. I've just shown you two here with the direction, the speed, the spin on the serve, and then the height and the depth and the spin with a forehand or a backhand, whichever it might be. We might go with a short angle. We might go with some sort of measure which is taking the opponent out here, which is an indication of effectiveness, opens up the court then for the other side. Okay? So there are different ways in which we can measure effectiveness with ground strokes. I've just shown you one on the forehand and the backhand here, and then one with the serve. But take the principle, don't just take the drills. Take the principle. How do I use targets in my coaching at the moment? A question for you. How do I use targets in my coaching? Who puts the targets down, number one? Is it me or is it my players? If I'm doing it, are we missing some opportunities? The answer probably is yes. Then, am I using targets to indicate where the ball should bounce? And what does that really mean? What does it really mean? Or could I get my players to think more by using markers and targets outside the court so that the players start to use the speed and the spin to be more effective with what they do? And then we start to have some measures of effectiveness. So I want to leave it there. I'm going to say thank you to the two boys and also Pedro for the presentation. Thank you for listening. I hope it's made you think a little bit, and maybe for you to, reflect a little bit on your own coaching and what you do, what you believe. Maybe if there are opportunities to look at doing things differently. Enjoy this afternoon. Thank you for having me, and Vitor, again, thank you for the invitation, and thank you.